So 11.
There's 12. Or did you count Denise's 11?
Denise is 11.
We need 12. Are we waiting for 12?
Correct.
Yeah, or call Megan.
Do you want me to send an email, Dan?
Yeah, if you want to. We'll give it a few more minutes again, unfortunately. Judy's coming in. Veronica, did you already count Judy once?
Yes, I did. I had said it, but I was on mute. Sorry.
Hey, Judy.
Hey, Dan.
We have a guest joining us.
Veronica, Karen Lovato said she's trying to join.
Okay.
Will that make 12, Veronica?
It will. Yes.
She's having trouble opening PDFs and asked if I could send her the link.
You got it? Or you want me to?
Could you do it? Because I only have it in the PDF too.
There she is.
All right. We'll go ahead and get started. We have a quorum of 12.
Still do the roll call voting though.
Yeah, we will.
Okay.
Veronica, you want to do roll call, please?
Please come off mute when I call your name and let me know verbally that you are here. Aaliyah Armstrong. Faith Dayton.
I'm here.
Teresa DeSimone.
Here.
Drew Ayakamini Hare.
Here.
Judy Popowski or Joanna Olson.
Here.
Paul Davis.
Here.
Noemi Guerrero or anyone with Mendocino Community Health Clinics. Karen Lovato.
Present, and apologies for being late. Trouble with Adobe.
Glad you're here. Blythe Post or anyone with Mendocino County Office of Education. Amanda Archer, anyone with Mendocino County Youth Project. Judy Albert.
Here.
Sage Wolf.
Here.
Dan McIntyre.
Here.
Natalie Shepard or anyone with Tapestry Family Services. Sandra Stolfi.
Here.
Sarah McCormick or anyone with the City of Fort Bragg. Shannon Riley or anyone with the City of Ukiah. Nicholas Kennedy.
Here.
Welcome. San Juanita Valdez. Mary Haynes or anyone with Nation's Finest. Mariah McGill, Elizabeth Elliott or anyone with Northern Circle Indian Housing Authority. Chris Pikarski or anyone with Redwood Valley Little River Band of Pomo Indians. Denise Courtney.
You call me?
Yes.
Yes, I'm here.
And circling back, Blythe Post. Blythe, are you there?
I can't hear anything.
Okay, we heard
Can
you.
you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right. There's something
All right.
wrong with mine, but I'll figure it out.
Okay, welcome. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Veronica. We're going to move on to public comment. There was 2 written public comments received. There's links to those on our agenda, which is posted on the website, and the comments are up there. Is there any other public comment that's not on a non-agendized item?
Just real quickly, I received a 3rd written comment this morning, and I added it to the agenda that's posted on our website, and there's a link to it on the meeting webpage as well.
All right, thank you, Veronica. And I see Naomi is logging in right now too.
Yes.
Sorry, I was late. I'm still having looks like camera issues now, so I'm here.
No
Okay.
worries, Blythe. Not seeing any other public comment.
Oh, wait, I do. Sorry, I do.
Oh, sorry.
Just putting it in our brains to maybe look at our membership and who is a member and their attendance at meetings that we might want to consider looking at our policies around, meeting attendance expectations and if there's folks to move or like entities that are part of the membership that haven't attended a meeting in a while, we might consider soon moving them to some sort of pending status or something so that we can, this meeting almost was a no-go as well as last meeting was a no-go because of quorum. That's all. Thank you.
Noted, Sage. Thank you. All right, we're going to move down to approval of minutes. Do you have both of these, Veronica, I assume, okay. So we're going to approve the April 17th, 2023 full membership minutes, membership meetings. I'm trying to read with no glasses today, and that's not going to be very much fun. Was there any corrections to those meeting minutes? If not, I need a motion to approve those as presented.
I didn't see any corrections and I was actually at that one, so I will move to approve that meeting minutes Monday, April 17th.
I'll
Thank
second.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Sage. Roll call, any discussion on that? I don't see any discussion or hands. Roll call, Veronica? Assuming you're doing roll call and you haven't stuck that in yet.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I'm still doing it for now. Please say yes, no, or abstain when I call your name. Faith Dayton,
Yes.
Teresa DeSimone,
Yes.
Drew Yakamini Hare,
Abstain.
Joanna Olson,
Yes.
Paul Davis,
Yes.
Noemi Guerrero,
Yes.
Karen Lovato,
Yes.
Blythe Post,
Abstain.
Judy Albert,
Yes.
Sage Wolf,
Yes.
Dan McIntyre,
Yes,
Sandra Stolfi,
Yes.
Nicholas Canaday,
Abstain.
and Denise Gorney.
Yes.
Motion approved.
right. Thank you. We're gonna go on to approve the very short set of canceled minutes for the 17th of July. For the meeting that we did not have a quorum for. So I need a motion to approve those by somebody that was present.
make a
move to
motion
approve.
Oh, I'll second.
Thanks, Judy, and thank you, Blythe. Any discussion on those meeting minutes? Not hearing, roll call, Veronica?
Faith Dayton,
Abstain.
Teresa DeSimone,
Yes.
Drew Yakamini Hare,
Abstain.
Joanna Olson,
Yes.
Paul Davis,
Abstain.
Noemi Guerrero,
Abstain.
Karen Lovato,
Abstain.
Blythe Post,
Yes.
Judy Albert, did we lose Judy?
No, Judy's,
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sage Wolf,
Yes.
Dan McIntyre,
yes,
Sandra Stolfi,
Yes.
Nicholas Canaday,
Abstain.
Denise Gorney.
Yes.
Motion approved.
thank you very much. We're gonna go on to the next item, which is special presentations. So Veronica is gonna do a special presentation today for us. I assume it covers both of the next two topics, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It is your floor.
So welcome. As many of you know, my name is Veronica Wilson. I'm a program administrator here for Mendocino County and Social Services. I'm appointed by Social Services or the County of Mendocino as the staff for the Mendocino County Homeless Services Continuum of Care, which this meeting is a meeting of the full body of that group, which we'll talk about more. I wanted to welcome Nicholas Canaday with the GEO Reentry Group, who is a new member of the COC, and this is his first meeting. I see that Aaliyah Armstrong has also joined us. Welcome, Aaliyah. Glad to see you. And sorry, I got an IM and I got distracted. So I just wanted to note that for our attendance today. But so I know that Noemi Guerrero is a fairly new member. This is who's joined us recently. And we've had some other members join, but I don't see them here today. So we've had a couple new members join us individual members. I don't have my notes in front of me, so I had it all written out for last month. And yeah, I'm not as prepared this month. So does anyone have any questions about our new membership or anything like that? Nope. Okay. So the second piece that I have for our presentation is I have a PowerPoint that I would like to review with everybody to go over. It's our new membership invitation and orientation. Some of you, this may be a repeat. Some of you, it may be new information. So I'm going to ask that you hold questions until the end. And okay, I'm going to share my screen. Give me just a moment. And I will not be able to see you. So if someone needs me, please let me know. Everybody see that? Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so welcome. As I shared, this is the Mendocino County Homeless Services Continuum of Care. I often abbreviated MCHSCoC because that's a whole lot easier to write out. And sometimes we'll just abbreviate it as COC. It's a little bit easier to remember. So the purpose of a continuum of care is to address homelessness locally. We have found that there are a variety of areas that homelessness touches. And we need the expertise of everyone in our community to be able to be inclusive of all the people who are experiencing homelessness. And so the continuum of cares there in California, there's 44 individual COCs, but I believe there's 52 or 53 counties in the state. And so I share that to show that not all COCs there's not one per county. Fresno Madera Continuum of Care is an example of that, as is the Shasta COC. That's a consortium of, I believe, 8 COCs, 8 specific counties up in the northeastern county, part of the state. And so each jurisdiction and each area needs a different approach. And that's what this program was established to create and to facilitate. So what is a continuum of care for the homeless? In the 1990s, HUD established a program that wasn't called the Continuum of Care at the time, but it has since evolved into that name. It was to facilitate a community-wide effort to address homelessness together using both funding that they were providing through the legislation, as well as leveraging mainstream resources. Things that we think of like the Housing Choice Voucher Program that is to serve anyone who's low income. But people who are experiencing homelessness are often low income too. And so there's a lot of crossover between people experiencing homelessness and all of the different areas. And so HUD recognized that service providers were each individually trying to address homelessness, but they weren't working together in a united effort to do that. And so this program was created to facilitate that and to incentivize that using funding. And so it lists the legislation there, but it was promote a community-wide commitment to the goal of ending homelessness. So as I said, it was established in the 90s. And the program the legislation that established the board was passed in 2012. It required each continuum of care to have a governance charter that would establish a governing board that would be responsible for making major decisions within the continuum of care, how to, with, local policies regarding how to, if you're going to use funding through the continuum of care, the operating requirements, they're called written standards. And so the HEARTH Act, Homeless Emergency Assistance and Rapid Transition to Housing, it's actually the second time I've said that today, that really established the legislation that codified more of what we do. So there's the COC's general membership, which is a meeting of today. So there's a total of 23 COC represent members. And that group elects a smaller board that then does to make decisions and like a strategic plan and different pieces like that. And as I shared before, the County Social Services is the collaborative applicant is the formal name. And we take, I am responsible for doing applications, overseeing local funding opportunities. There's actually 3 open right now, which we'll talk about later in the meeting. I wanted to provide a list of the available funding through the Continuum of Care program. So what funding sources do we have here locally? So in Mendocino County, we have a permanent supportive housing voucher program. It is funded by the COC program, so it's HUD funding. It's a voucher-based program, and it's operated by the Community Development Commission of Mendocino County, or CDC. CDC also operates the Coordinated Entry System project, and so they receive funding to make sure that our coordinated entry system is available in the community, and they're kind of helping with the administration of that. And that one is called a supportive services only project, because you're only providing services, you're not providing actual housing. There's funding through the Emergency Solutions Grant, or ESG. It is federal funding that is a pass through the state. So a lot of people will hear, oh, that's a pass through grant. And that just means that there are entitlement jurisdictions like San Francisco or LA that are large enough to contract directly with HUD. But then there's smaller communities like Mendocino County or Lake County that are too small for HUD to manage individual contracts. And so the funding goes through the state. And so our contractors contract with the state instead of directly with HUD. So it's a little bit of an easier way to manage smaller communities like ours. We also received funding. This was a one-time established project, but we do still have some funding that we're using now through the California Emergency Solutions and Housing Grant, or CASH. We also have received the Homeless Emergency Aid Program, or HEAP, which funded some operating costs that have come and gone, but it also helped to fund Oar Creek Commons 2 and the Plateau in Fort Bragg. And then the last project or funding source that we have is through the Homeless Housing Assistance and Prevention Program, or HAP. And that's a fairly new form of funding that's coming through the state of California in the governor's budget. And we currently have a request for proposals open to distribute the funding for 2 of those rounds of funding. A little bit of an update that I haven't previously shared. When the budget was passed in July, it included a revision to the HAP program and established it as an annual allocation instead of just the 5 rounds. It's not in the legislation, so it's not codified like how Works is, but or other programs like that are like, we can guarantee that they're coming, but it is permanently in the budget. And so as long as they put funding in there, in that budget line item, we're good. So that provides a little bit more longevity that we've been looking for in our community. How you can help, join the team. You can, there's different service providers in the community who are operating services. You can, reach out, what are you doing? How can we, work together? There you can become a general member of the COC. We are always looking for folks to represent various subpopulations so that we can make sure that all people who are experiencing homelessness are represented, not just those folks who are the loudest or present the most, the best. So, because those folks are, we remember them, we hear their message, and so it's easier to articulate that. But we need to make sure that everyone's at the table and everyone's voice is heard. And so this is one way that we try to promote that. Show up at these meetings. Help us to approve changes to our governance charter, understanding, we'll explain all the federal stuff, but we need your help in deciding how are we going to make that, what is it going to look like locally? Yes, we know what HUD's expectations are. Yes, we know what we've done before, but what are your perceptions on what we can do to make it better? Help us to select board members per the COC governance charter. So show up to the meetings and vote, have a voice and actually, participate in these meetings. I'm really heartened to see that we have several non-COC board members who are general members represented today, because, we need more voices than just our board. So if you do join the COC, what are your responsibilities? We ask that you attend 4 meetings per year, 1 per quarter. Normally it would have happened in July, but we had to reschedule it for this month because we didn't have enough people show up last month. So that's one of the things that we ask is, if you are going to place membership, please commit to attending those 4 meetings per year. COC members are asked to serve on 1 or more committees. We have 5 standing committees established, and there are several ad hoc that happen. We always do an ad hoc for our annual point in time count or PIT. We also do ad hoc for our funding opportunities that come up so that we're always changing that, and it's not always the same people with the same voices. And so and then we also have the strategic planning committee and many others that are outlined in our governance chart and our COC application. How do the meetings work? Well, you've seen a little bit about what we've done so far, and later on we provide opportunities to get updates from our local jurisdictions, updates on local work that's going on. What governance decisions are we making? What funding opportunities are available? And so there's information that's updated, and we do our best to share that here at these meetings. These meetings, because they are established with by federal legislation, the county council has determined that we are bound by the Ralph M. Brown Act requirements, which means that we have to publicly hold all our meetings. They have to be available to the public. We have to post online in advance if we're going to take any action. We have to publicly announce this, we're having meetings and this is where we're having it. And so that way we're not just in a bubble doing what we want. It's also, we want the community and members of the public to participate and to weigh in and give their opinion. And then last slide, applications are available on our website, https://mendocinococ.org. If you add in /continuum of care, you'll go directly to that page, but just mendocinococ.org will get you there. Here's my contact information. And does anyone have any questions, comments?
Thank you, Veronica. Any questions for Veronica? And not hearing you, we're going to go ahead and move on then. To updates from local jurisdictions. Karen Lovato or Meg?
Karen, you want to go first? If you have anything?
I'm trying to think if I have anything. Nothing is jumping to mind. Nothing is jumping to mind. We've been doing a lot of outreach fairs, end of summer, beginning of school outreach fairs for awareness raising and activities. We've really appreciated those that we've been invited to. So just trying to make sure that county activities are shared and the community is aware of them. But I think that's pretty much the main focus that I can think of at the moment.
Thanks, Karen. So I'll share from the county perspective, specifically around homelessness. Just a reminder to the COC that the RFP that's currently in process and closes on August 28th is for HAP funding, of which the county's technical allocation is about slightly less than half of that allocation. And although the COC and the county, are doing this work collaboratively, I do anticipate significant county presence through that RFP process when we get to the review team part. So we're gearing up for that. We're looking forward to going through that process and having contracts that would result from that RFP process. We haven't done a kind of official RFP like this in a little while. Another county program that's more recently launched, so I'm just going to comment on it because it is more recent, is the Front Door for Families program seed money came from the Family Homelessness Challenge grant that has now had Bringing Families Home, another allocation folded into it. That project is going really well. Much more aggressive than I had actually originally anticipated. Has served over 150 families already and really taking up a lot of energy in a positive way. So that program's going really well. And that's probably it on my update from the county's perspective for right now.
Thank you, Megan and Karen. Any questions from the board?
Megan, can you give a brief description of the Bringing Families Home?
Bringing Families Home is an allocation that child welfare agencies receive specifically for families that are involved in child welfare cases, and it can be very low level involvement. So they maybe just have an open referral, but their kids are not in foster care or something like that, but they just have some interaction with child welfare. And it's an allocation specifically for providing housing support for housing stability for those families. What's exciting about it is the definition of homelessness for that allocation is very broad. So if a family is housed, but they're in a place that's not super safe for kids, or there's something that's not the best environment for children, they can still qualify for this support. So it provides both direct financial assistance and staff time. We're using it almost exclusively for direct financial assistance for families, but it happens through the Front Door for Families program. That's how it's accessed.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
I mean, can it go on for more than a couple of months with a family, or just is it time limited?
No, there's very few rules. There's very few limitations on this funding. So it definitely goes, we are doing much longer than a few months if the family needs it.
Okay.
It provides, you probably know this, Judy, but particularly for families, if their children have been detained, they lose access to CalWORK's housing support.
Yes. Yes.
So their whole, the structures that can help them get their pieces in place go away when their children are detained. So
Right.
this can serve that gap while they're getting things in order to have their children returned to them.
Okay. Good.
Thank you, Megan. City Ukiah, Shannon. I don't think Shannon's here, correct? Okay. And the other two cities, I do not see Paul or Sarah McCormick. Right. Is there any other jurisdictions that want to give an update? I don't see any other ones present on my screen. We'll move down to standing committee reports. Strategic plan. I don't have anything to report other than we're going to review our governing board redesign that we talked about. Now it's been like a month, like 2 months ago.
Like a year.
Oh, we started this a year ago.
I'm
but
really
we-
looking forward to finishing it today.
Yeah, we gotta draw a conclusion to
Gotta
this.
get that done, yes.
One way or the other. There's no some way. We either gotta take it and throw it in the trash can or approve it.
Mhm.
One of the two
Strategic
options.
Planning Committee met last in, I think it was end of June, maybe early July, and came up with the draft that's presented today,
It was into June.
end of June.
So other than that, that's all I have. Any questions from the board? Shelters and Solutions, I know Angelica is no longer in charge of that. I do want to thank Angelica for the years of doing that. We really do appreciate it. And we will greatly miss you. Don't think we're not going to bug you still, but thank you. And we have not appointed somebody else to take charge on that yet, Sage. Coordinate entry, Sage.
I caught that.
Oh, you did.
I did. I'm going to completely fail at a really adequate coordinated entry update because I unfortunately had to miss our last coordinated entry meeting. And so I feel very discombobulated and I'm gonna really throw Veronica under the bus over there and see if you have an update, please. Thank you.
Let me pull up the minutes from our last meeting. We've made some really good progress. Our coordinated entry list management team with Nutmeg Consulting, they are in full swing. They are working on our data within HMIS. They have reviewed our policies and procedures at the last meeting. Paul Schmidt is his name, is the project, not the project lead, but the primary staff member assigned to it. He developed a coordinated entry flow chart based upon what is in our policies and procedures. And so the committee is using that to evaluate our policies and procedures to determine which is accurate, what is inaccurate, what do we need to take out, what do we need to add. And so it's a really great flow chart to show us what we are saying we're doing within our system. Our last meeting was on August 17th. Let me pull up the minutes from the July meeting. Myself and Paul with Nutmeg attended the last coordinated entry meeting held by the VA. And so the VA has a parallel coordinated entry that they do for the region. I believe it's Lake and Mendocino, possibly Sonoma counties, but I know it's Lake and Mendocino. And so we were able to attend that to help with any crossover within our mainstream system. So that's another big progress step that we've made recently. Let's see here. We've established transfer policy. So we've heard of situations where a person goes into rapid rehousing. They look like they're going to do really great. They've got a plan. And then a few months down the road, that plan falls apart. Something happens and the person isn't able to continue that plan. But now they're in housing and they don't qualify as chronically homeless anymore. Well, this transfer policy allows those who were chronically homeless when they entered a rapid rehousing program to retain that chronic homelessness status to where if they do need to circle back into that, they can. And so that's a really big leap that this committee has made us in the last few months. There is a really great work plan that Nutmeg has developed on what their plan is moving forward to improve the coordinated entry. Our first phase is to get a handle around it. And I feel like we've really completed our first phase this last week because we have a by name list that was generated through our business objects reporting system, as opposed to a big long spreadsheet that we then sort. So it's really great. We're going to be sending it out very, very soon. And so there has been a lot of progress made in a very short amount of time within this committee and this area, thanks to Nutmeg Consulting. Any question?
Thank you for the update, Veronica. Is there any other questions from the board? Not hearing you, we're going to go right back to Veronica for membership committee, which I don't think we had a meeting last month, did we?
We met in June, and this committee meets quarterly. We met to put together the press release and the presentation that I did earlier today. And so that annual invitation. So the next meeting will look at our membership and explore any of our full members who may not have attended and may need to be moved to advisory status.
Thank you, Veronica. Any questions on the membership meeting? Okay, we're going to go down to HMIS performance measurements. Veronica and Aya.
Aya, will you take this one?
Let me pull up my notes from the last meeting. Let's see, we met on August 10th, was the last time that we met. Mainly, we reported that the HIC pit had been completed from our end, that the HUD HMIS capacity building grant was complete, and there was no other updates unless people had questions. That we have continued with data quality or data completeness reports, and we are working on the data quality monitoring plan. The first thing that we did at that particular meeting was vote on the draft as it stands, and I think we had a positive vote that the subcommittee passed it. And then we had a little bit further conversation about HMIS policies and procedures and the agency agreement, but I don't think there was any notable news to talk about those. And that we have the upcoming there's the upcoming changes to the data standards from HUD that we'll have a whole presentation and a project going forward for that. And then WellSky is also at the same time making a bunch of changes to their particular to the essentially the GUI and some of their tools within the former Service Point. Anything else I'm missing, Veronica?
I'd like to announce that Service Point has a new web link. WellSky changed it a little bit. We've updated the link on the COC website. So if you go to the COC website and you go to the page on HMIS, the new link is there. We're going to be sending an email out to all of the HMIS end users with that link. But just so that if people know if you are having issues, that might be the reason why. In your packet is the July 2023 data completeness report. I know that Aya has been working back with providers to understand that report and to make it in a more meaningful format. So that's something that's we're actively working on.
Thank you, Veronica. Was there any questions from the board on the data completeness? Okay, not hearing any. Is there any public comment on any of the committee reports? Not seeing or hearing any public comment in the committee reports. We're going to move on to ad hoc committee reports. Do you have anything to report, Veronica, on the 2023 funding review ad hoc committee report?
So that one was established for the RFP. I've had to establish another one for the COC NOFO that has been released since our last meeting. It was released the week of our last meeting. And then we're going to need a third review team for our emergency solutions grant balance of state for this year. I was going to ask the COC review team if they'd also be willing to do the ESG because there's a lot of crossover there. But our RFP for our HAP funding, that funding review team has to be different because anyone who's requesting funding cannot be part of the review team. And a lot of our normal folks are requesting funding. And so should I announce the 7 folks?
I think so, Veronica, maybe.
Yeah. So from the county side, because this is both county and COC funded, all put in together in one big pile. We have Chris Keir has agreed from CalWorks, as has Jesse Van Forest with Social Services, Adult and Aging Services, and Venus Hoagland with Social Services Fiscal. So we've got a good representation there. Blythe Post has volunteered, as has Nicholas Canaday and Faith Dayton, I believe. And there was one more person who was escaping off the Amanda Archer with the Youth Project also volunteered. So we've got a group of 7. We don't have anybody that has lived experience though. So Aaliyah, if you're interested in participating, please let me know. Or if there's anyone else, send me an email or give me a call. My contact information is on the agenda. Do you want me to go into the next ad hoc?
Sorry, I was dealing with an emergency in Crescent City
That's
since we
okay.
have no power up there.
Okay, and then with the point in time count, we need to disband this one because it's been submitted and it's complete. And I would have presented it this month, but it was just approved and I didn't have the time to pull out the report and do another revised agenda for you guys. So that will be coming out next month.
Okay, thank you, Veronica.
Yes. Any ad hoc questions?
Any questions ad hoc? Not hearing any questions on ad hocs. We're going to go down to board governance and protocols and board protocols and governance. I cannot read without my glasses today. It was no joke. My mother always told me once I got over 45, I'd go blind. She was right because I'm blind now. All right. So as many of you know, we had to cancel the last meeting because we didn't have enough general members show up. So the general membership meeting's happening, as Veronica had mentioned, 4 times a year. And I'm gonna kind of give an overview of what we've looked at in the past with some of this. In 2022, we had a pretty significant shortage of memberships for the general membership meetings as well as for our regular meetings. As far as our regular meetings go, we meet once a month, excluding December typically. And during this time frame, we've had a pretty static board since I started in 2018. So back in 2021, we started a conversation about reconfiguring the board to try to work around some of these delays in having meetings that restrict our ability to allocate funding. And what was essential to the committee that worked on this was not that anybody felt that they were being isolated out of this, but we wanted to get down to a smaller group of individuals as executive board members, which then would limit their participation on committees, because in the committee meetings, that's where we really do our work. And unfortunately, even in some committee meetings, we don't have enough participation to take place. I know I've sat on many where it's been like Judy, me, and myself, Judy, and Faith, or a couple other members. So what we're looking at doing is we're looking at trying to reduce the executive board down to 11 voting seats that rotate out every, I believe it said every 3 years, correct, Veronica? Yes. So during this process, I looked through the majority of the COC boards in those 48 different COCs in the state of California. And much to my surprise, some of the larger COCs, such as Los Angeles and some of the larger jurisdictions, had some of the smallest boards, which I didn't actually expect that. I expected like Los Angeles to have a lot. They ended up having actually 7 seats on their executive board. And then there was other ones that went clear up in the 30 range. I don't know if anybody's ever sat on a board that has 30 voting members. It's hard to get stuff done. It's hard to get people to show up. So I think what we were trying to achieve was a balance between too small and too large. Now, will this balance work forever? Probably not. Is it a perfect solution? Probably not. Have we thought of everything? No. Have we about talked the topic to death in our meetings? Absolutely. I think we've beat this topic up a zillion times. So let me kind of go over, it's in your guys' agenda on page 19. So everybody can look at what I'm talking about right now. So what we're proposing is that there be 11 voting seats. And what this would do is we would have a chair and we'd have a vice chair, and the chair would not vote unless there was a tie. In the majority of the boards that I sit on, the chairs do not vote. We simply try to conduct the meeting, make sure we're running it by whatever Brown Act or whatever other standards are in place. And then we break a tie if there's a tie amongst the members. There would be 4 seats that are on here that would be standing, and there would be 4 that are from a representative group seat, which some of the topics on the right hand, some of the categories on the right hand side are available. That doesn't mean that's an exclusive list. That is everything we could think of when we had our last meeting. So there might be other groups that come in there. This reevaluation started with an audit from the state of California. And Megan can correct me if I get this wrong, but it originally started with an audit from the state of California telling us that our COC did not meet the minimum requirements of a COC. We didn't have the needed seats, and we needed to add in additional seats. And I think they wanted a business seat and an educational seat and a couple others. Well, in reality, the legislation that created the COC says we only have to have 2 seats. We have to have we have to be representatives of relative organizations and projects serving homeless subpopulations, and we have to include at least one homeless or formerly homeless individual. So what we turn around, and I don't know if did we ever respond, Megan, to the state, or did we tell them we're still evaluating it?
We told them that we didn't agree with their finding that we needed to include the business and education communities. But yeah.
And what it's actually, then we started the conversation, because during this time we were all going through COVID and we're all busy. I mean, I know I'm busy. I know everybody that's sitting on here is busy. So we started the conversation about having a rotation of seats to get a rotation of fresh ideas on the executive board, and still encouraging general members to show up so that we can have them be active in our committees, and participating in making the policy that's brought back to the board. The critical thing here is, I know that I've heard the argument that, well, there's already a limit of participation, and if we limit the board seats, there's going to be less participation. And that possibly could be true. I've designed some really stupid stuff in the past, and I'm not saying I'm perfect. But what I can say is that I think, relative to what we do as an organization and group as a COC, that we need more that general participation on the outside that would be available for those funding reviews. I know, Megan, in this last COC, this last NOFA, a lot of the members on the executive committee are filing applications for funding for HAP, which is really narrowing down the review committees. Overall, we need to try something different than we've had going in the last 5 years since I started. Whether it lasts 2 years, I think we should at least give it a minimum of 2 years to make sure it works. But if it doesn't work, then we come back and reevaluate that change and change it again. That's why I think we set on 11, because overall, if we took all the COCs in the state, kind of the average was about 11. Like I said, it varied from 7 all the way up to the 30s, but the majority of them were right around 11 members. And with 11 members, we can have that rotation of seats out on a 3-year cycle. We would basically rotate out 3 or 4 seats, depending on the year it came up, on a rotating cycle, and that will allow for fresh ideas. That doesn't mean that people can't rejoin or get reelected, but allows that opportunity of that participation. And it gives agencies a break. You know, like, okay, I can commit to 3 years, and then we're going to go from executive member meeting every year, every month, to just being a general member. And then if things change, we can recommit. So that's kind of my explanation of where I'm coming from. Like I said, I can't even remember how many hours we've spent on this, but it's been a lot talking. I know we've had many committee meetings on this, and it's time to bring it back and listen to everybody else's thoughts on what they feel, or if this is something we want to either move forward with or we want to kill. And we want to move forward in concept, because there's going to be a lot of changes that we have to make to the documents that go along with the COC that we would bring back for final approval. This is just kind of a skeleton outline of what the board would look like, and then we'd have to make all our governance documents match that outline. So if you want to raise your hand on Zoom, we're open for discussion or comments. Did I miss anything, Megan?
I don't think so. I mean, you explained well our thought process in overall shrinking the number of seats. I did want to, draw people's attention to this document. It's only 1 page, so it's not too much to look at. Actually, I'm wondering, Veronica, if you want to pull it up maybe and share screen, because we do, what's sort of slightly unusual about it is that we at that 8 of the 12 seats would be held by a representative group. And then we listed out the eligible representative groups, which are far more than 8. So it's a little bit of a, we spent a lot of time on like special populations, and the special populations or the special projects just got longer and longer and longer. So we couldn't, this is a way to recognize that all of the programs or groups that we have listed here have an invested interest. I don't just mean invested like financially, but they have an actual, they have something to contribute to this discussion, but there's a lot of them. So the point is that those representative groups would cycle through over time, and we would have the opportunity in a long period of time to have representation from all of these groups, or as many of these groups as are willing to participate.
Nicholas?
I just have a clarifying question. You mentioned that the seats of the executive committee, they can serve in the smaller, in the other ad hocs, or they can't serve?
They can, Nicholas, but they can't represent a quorum. So there could only be 5 members off the executive committee in any given ad hoc. And so it would require more active membership. It would require more active members to sign up for the COC with the intent to be active in committees and stuff as required by the governance charter.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And something that we've mentioned in the past is that an agency may qualify under one or more of these groups. So like I was thinking GEO group, we would all think of as criminal justice, but it could also fall under, people with disabilities, because they serve people who have substance use issues. So we can be creative when we think about which one of these categories a provider falls under.
And it's not an all-inclusive list. As you can see at the bottom, it says other relative organizations. If we had made an all-inclusive list, the page would keep going on and on and on and on, and like perpetuity. So I think the intent is to define a model that works for us to try, see if it improves attendance and improves interaction with the general membership for a couple of years. And if that doesn't work, then we'll have to readdress how this works moving forward. And I misspoke when I said 11, it is 12. So 12 was kind of the center. And it's not an official study because I didn't write them all down, but Judy?
Yeah, I certainly think that we should try something new. I have my own hesitation just because what happened with the last general membership meeting without having a quorum, when Angelica put out the Shelter and Solutions Committee, and she puts out the agenda and gives plenty of advance notice, and we actually had a task to do. It was just she and I who showed up. And so I just have this fear that even though, all right, you're not going to be required to attend these board meetings, but you'll be on a committee that you'll actually be a working committee that you'll have a task to do, that again, the same thing will happen. And I don't know how much personal outreach needs to be done, because this is a lot of money, and it's important that it gets done and that everybody understands what is available out there and what each group is doing. So, I'm going to support it. I just have some fear about how the committees are really going to work.
I thank you for your comment, Judy. I agree. I have, as much as I've been driving this change to try something different, I think that I do have some reservations about how this is going to work or not. And I think that's where, leadership needs to step up and work on the interaction with the members and have those conversations about the importance of, being an active participant in the conversation that affects every one of us. I mean, it doesn't just affect one agency, it affects everybody. And we can see the results. I know as a housing provider, we can greatly see the results when agencies succumb to fiscal and other constraints and have to shut down. I mean, and ultimately that affects us all. And I think that's where that conversation definitely has to step up, with the leadership team. And I include myself in that conversation, right?
Yeah, I feel like we have where we're there's like two issues that are overlapping here. It's the structure of the board, and then also what both Judy and Sage a little bit earlier today was getting at. We need the people that committed to be here to actually be here. And if they can't be here and they can't show up for the committees, that's okay, but don't hold that space. So we somehow have to have that message at the same time that if you're going to be engaged in this process, and we desperately want more people engaged in this process, but we also need you to be engaged in the process, like with commitment. And if you can't do it, then we can't, because that's where we fall apart. I mean, it's so it slows everything down so significantly when we have meetings or we have committees and people don't come to the table the way we need. It makes things way more slow than this whole topic deserves and needs, which is much more intentional, speedy response. So somehow we have to convey both of those messages at the same time.
Mhm.
Nicholas?
So this is my first official meeting, but I do have an idea or a comment, I guess. When we look at the number, and I don't know how many general members there are. I missed the last meeting. It was the first one I was supposed to attend, so I apologize there. But what I'm looking at, and I guess my thoughts are, could we reduce the executive group even further to allow for more participation in the committees that need to be assigned, that then enables people not to be spread so thin? Like I'm sitting here thinking, well, it's gonna be more valuable for me not to be on the board and be in committees, because that's where the work needs to get done, versus sitting on the board to approve things. Like, and I may be wrong, you guys can all correct me, that's totally okay. I just don't know what is the ask maybe from a general, like from like as a new member. Is it that we need to be more involved in the committees, or is it that, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if I'm making sense, but I'm just kind of thinking and processing out loud here.
Yeah, I mean, the ask for a general member is that you have to show up 4 times a year to the general membership meeting like we're having today, and then participate in at least one committee meeting. And we did look, there are a couple models. Orange County has a model, and I think one of the Central Valley counties had a model where there was basically, you had a 3-tier system. You had a general membership meeting, a general membership committee, you had a board, and then you had an executive committee. So you had like a smaller executive committee of 6 to 7 people. The board was like 20, and then you had a larger general membership pool. But they had larger COCs in general. I think Veronica said we had 23 members right now, general members. Their memberships were more closer to 100. So there was a bigger pool of people involved in those. And then there's the other spectrum where we had just a bigger board with small memberships. So I think we determined 12 was kind of the sweet spot in the middle for a change for us. We had talked in a couple of meetings about dwindling down to like 6 on an executive committee, and then there'd be a board of like 14, and then there'd be the general membership meeting. But that would get more complicated in the meeting requirements. And I don't think it would really achieve what we were trying to move forward with, getting the participation in play.
And just to clarify for the board right now, the way we have been in the habit of behaving is that the chair and the vice chair have served as the executive committee for they're the ones who usually review the agenda ahead of time together with Veronica and sometimes me. But so it's not exactly an executive committee, but the chair and vice chair did have even more expectations beyond the board members. But Nicholas, I think it's a good question that you bring up about being really clear with members about what the participation expectation is. I will say we haven't done a good job of enforcing is a much stronger word than I mean, but holding people to the rules that we have in place. We did have some rules that if you missed 2 or 3 meetings in a row, you would be there was a whole process involved in saying maybe this isn't a good fit. We never wanted to do that because we always wanted more participation. So we ourselves weren't very good at saying, okay, you've just not been here enough. You're going to be gone now. So we have to somehow find that balance between encouraging as much participation as possible and holding people to the expectations that they signed up for. So.
And I know the application outlines like this is what
commitment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I think it's clear that way. I guess from a like again from an outside perspective, what I'm hearing is the value in being in the committees is going to outweigh the value of being on the board because of the limited like. I'm just I haven't been involved, so I don't know, but the need is greater. I think on a different level is what I'm hearing. But I
think the thing about the committees is there's some people who are really interested in certain topics, right? Like they love HMIS, right? Like that's where they want to spend a lot of their time. So it makes sense for them to be on those committees. So there is a little bit of a way to, if you have a particular passion around a certain, you know, part of this whole puzzle, the committees might really resonate with you. Yeah. And I will say the review committee, which a lot of people are conflicted out of, is pretty fun. So when you get to be on a review committee and you're not conflicted out, you really learn a lot and it's a really good experience. So those people who are doing the direct service often don't get to participate in that part, but it is a valuable experience.
So Megan, I had a quick question, or Dan, maybe you could answer. When we're looking at the eligible representatives for all those groups, and we're looking at filling the remainder of the 8 or whatnot, how would we go about voting in like the ranking of who would be starting those first 3-year cycle, right? Like, are there projects going on right now that critically involve families that would require me to be on the board during that amount of time, or certain projects where, you know, I'm eligible to be on the ranking committee for the funding because I'm not, you know, applying for any of the HAP funding or the HEAP funding or anything like that. So I guess my question would be is, have we thought about, you know, what that would look like in regards to ranking and rating for putting people in those spaces at what specific time?
You know, we didn't really tease that out yet, Blythe. We were kind of like hoping we could get to the point that people approve this structure, and then we were going to figure out, you know, it's going to take a couple years to clean it all up, right? Because we need to fill those existing 8 seats, probably with existing members, not do like a fresh thing. So I see there's 12 existing members. I'm taking out the seats that are like already established seats, and 8 of these representative board seats. So 4 current members, in theory, would lose their seat this first year, let's say. But I would think we wanted to cycle them out in 3-year cycles. So there would be another opportunity, maybe just a gap of a year or 2.
Yeah, basically it would cycle out every year in theory.
3 or 4 people would cycle out every year, something like that.
Yeah, it would probably be 4 every year, so we had a fresh cycle out. But those are some of the details we still have to hammer out by looking at the governance charter and seeing how that works versus how many vacant seats we have already that might just cycle off, versus how that rating would work. Faith?
This sounds good to me. I like that you guys have done this work and I support it. And my only concern is just diversity. As I sit here and I look at all the faces in front of me right now, I think maybe discussing how we might establish another seat for another minority group. I know there's a lot of minority groups that we could consider, but that would be the only consideration I have, is making sure that we're getting more minority representation. But otherwise, it seems like a great idea, like to streamline. So I just wanted to support that.
Just to respond to that, we do have 1 seat dedicated. That seat number 2 is for tribal government / entity, specifically for that purpose.
I saw that, and that's great. And I actually think there should be another one too. And like for either, I mean, to be discussed. I think that's necessary, but I think there should be another minority group designated board member.
I think we had talked about that. I mean, at length, and I'm not opposed to that. We started to get to, it got uncomfortable. Do we do a Latino versus a BIPOC versus an LGBT? Like, who's more minor? You know, it got a little bit hard. So that's sort of when, in a sense, that we retreated to, you know, tribal government is a is a sovereign nation. It's a little bit different in terms of rather than a underrepresented group. It's more complicated and more, I would say, substantial to that in some way. But it did get hard, Faith, I agree. I wanted to make sure we had diverse representation, but then we, who's the most deserving of that, the elderly, it got hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, it's hard to talk about these subjects, and I think they're
Yeah.
important. And I think looking at the population that we're serving might be helpful, or maybe looking at the population of Ukiah. It's hard to talk about, but I think it's important. So I really love that you guys did this work too. I don't want to like minimize that. So I think it's great. So.
And Faith, that was definitely a long part of all the meetings was that, and that's kind of how we ended up with the tribal on there. Because it was important that it be diverse. And I think it's important that it's diverse in organizations too. Right now I know at RCHDC, we have the most diverse employment group in our company that we've ever had in our history, which is really cool from my perspective. So, Megan, you have your hand up. Did you have something else?
That's Veronica.
Like,
Yes. So when we first created this, there was something in the back of my mind that I couldn't put my finger on about the board structure that I figured out. And I want to share my screen and show you guys so that it's easier to explain when you can see it. So what I am showing you is the detailed instructions for the 2023 COC collaborative application. So that application that HUD scores us on every year that we were looking at, like we recently looked at the collaboration between, medical and hospitals and the COC. The section that I have up here is collaboration related to children and youth. And so one of the questions is regarding having a formal partnership with youth education providers, state education agency, local education agency, and school districts. So those are the four. One of the questions that we get points specifically for is demonstrating that we have a formal partnership with one of these four. And so because we have a governance charter board seat dedicated to an organization serving children, I was able to say yes because Blythe is on the team. If we take that out and we don't have a dedicated seat, we need to demonstrate the formal partnership in another way. I don't know what that would look like within our own community. It says we can put it in policies and procedures. So maybe we create something that
Veronica, if
districts. Yes.
Sorry, if you put me in as a specific category as I am considered a local education agency. So you could consider me as an LEA and then someone else filling that position of serving kids, and or we could designate any of my homeless liaisons for Ukiah Unified, Willits Unified, Fort Bragg Unified, which cover our three main areas. If we had like a MOU with those top three districts, then they would qualify under school districts and LEA positions.
Right. And that would be a formal partnership, and we wouldn't need any of them listed on the board if we created some form of MOU.
I see.
But I want this group, I want the full membership to understand if you take schools or children out of this left category, we have to do something else to retain these points.
Gotcha.
So that's
It
what I
might
want.
not be a bad idea anyway, really. I mean, a formal partnership and MOU with the school liaisons probably is a good idea.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. And I think that's something too, Megan, that you and I and Jason could work on, like just even what that format would look like is in regards to, referrals from school districts to, our COC programs that are funded and vice versa.
Mhm.
Cause there's a lot of crossover even with, you know, say youth project or Head Start that are, you know, operating services for their homeless families that come through my program just in identification. And so if we have something like that similar with our Live Oak Apartments and transportation with the local school district, I mean, there's just so many ways that we could kind of incorporate that.
Mhm.
Is what's coming up for me anyway.
And just a piece to remember, it has to be with the continuum of care,
Right.
not with the county.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think
Thank
I
you
think
for
it's-
keeping that clear, Miss Veronica.
as the political winds shift to the scoring point, all these applications is going to change. So we have to be cognizant that we're making changes to the board that work for the community, which may or may not be the political winds of the current month or current year with any federal or state legislation. So is there any other comments on this draft? If not, because I think there's another item, right, Veronica, on the agenda?
Well, do we need a formal vote on this? Probably, I would hope maybe.
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
We're gonna need a formal vote so we can move forward because we have to change, Veronica and I have to work on updating the governance charter and making all the details of all this that works behind the scenes to make this board configuration work. And the timing over when it rolls out, because it's not gonna happen overnight. Okay, so if there's no other discussion, I'll need a recommended, putting a motion to approve this redesign with, I would assume we'd bring this back for full membership approval at the next quarterly meeting in 2 months, correct, Veronica?
Yeah, we would bring the full language, all the full governance charter showing all the changes.
Back in October,
Our next one is October. I don't know if we're gonna have it done by then.
but
just
at
because
least
we have
the
all the
fourth quarter.
funding.
Okay.
Sure.
So we'll come back at a future general membership meeting.
So the motion would be to move forward with this concept and bring back final language at the next membership committee. That should probably address both the language changes and the transition plan. The
Yes.
issue that Blythe brought up, or what does the next 3 years look like in terms of transitioning to this?
Yes.
I want to honor the comments that Faith brought up and some of the comments that were brought up today. So it would be helpful, I think, if the motion was to continue with this concept, but there may be a little bit of, fussing about the edges possibly. I'm afraid we may have forgotten an eligible representative group. So if we
Well, I
come up with
think-
another one, I noticed that I don't know why, but soup kitchens are not on here, or those groups have been not as present as I would have liked. So I was just thinking there might be something that we're like, oh, why did we forget that important group?
Well, the list is all inclusive effectively by the last line,
Right,
Megan.
I know. We left a little catch-all there, but yeah.
Unfortunately,
HUD
unless we
does-
keep,
And HUD provides a list of 33 categories of organizations or people that they want to know about in the application. So we could reference that.
Yeah.
So do you want me to make a
should
motion?
Make a motion, yeah.
yeah, either Faith or Blythe can make a motion.
Whatever Megan Van Sant just said, I repeat that and I make a motion for it.
Thank you,
So
Faith.
what direction to move forward
Make a
with?
motion
incorporating
to
this?
approve the governing board seat redesign draft with other identified relevant organizations to then be presented for the formal board committee meeting for final approval.
So we would come back with the governance charter language changes as well as a transition plan as soon as is practical for staff.
Faith, you want to second that?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I thought I first did, but I'll second it.
Well,
Perfect.
either way.
Either one, I'll take second. That's great.
Is there any discussion on that motion?
Team
Any
effort.
public comment? Seeing neither, Veronica, roll call, please.
Please say yes, no, or abstain when I call your name. Aaliyah Armstrong. Think she might have left. Faith Dayton.
Yes.
Teresa Di Simone.
Yes.
Drew Yakamini Hare.
Yes.
Joanna Olson. Joanna Olson. I'll record as abstained. Paul Davis.
Yes.
Noemi Guerrero.
Yes.
Karen Lovato.
Yes.
Blythe Post.
Yes.
Judy Albert.
Yes, and I'm gonna have to leave after this. Sorry.
Thank you, Judy.
Sage Wolf.
Yes.
Dan McIntyre.
Yes.
Sandra Stolfi.
Yes.
Nicholas Canaday.
Yes.
Denise Gorney.
Yes.
Motion passed. And we still have a quorum.
Thank you, Veronica. All right, we'll move down to the code of conduct, Veronica.
Yeah. So each year, the COC members are supposed to sign a revised code of conduct agreement. And so I wanted to show that to you and get your input. And of course, I'm having trouble. What the heck? I just did it. Made it go all big. Page display. Nope. I don't know. Okay. It's in your packet. I'm going to share my screen. So the COC members need to approve this every year, and then every one of us will sign it. The only revisions I made this year were to take out I don't even know if it mentions social services in here. I don't think it does. So there is no changes. Oh yes, Department of Social Services. I changed this from HHSA, Health and Human Services Agency, since we're no longer that. And otherwise this remains, oh, and I changed chair and co-chair from, it just said co-chairs, but our governance charter changed a little bit. So I just really just made it align with our current the way that we do it. We're supposed to do this during the first 3 months of the year, but we're a little bit behind. And so I'm presenting this for approval of the membership.
So any questions from the membership on this? Not hearing or seeing any questions or public comment on this topic.
Looks good.
I need a motion to approve this so we can get it out for everybody to sign.
Sorry, just in one question or comment in light of the 2 copies and kept, do we want to add, I don't want to jinx us, and I certainly hope it doesn't come to it again, but do we want to add an electronic copy will be the equivalent of the original, just in light of past COVID concerns?
We probably should, Karen.
Karen, help me where, oh, I see.
Last paragraph, yeah.
I see. I can add in electronic copies
Or that an electronic signature will be, you know,
equivalent to the,
equivalent to a whatever they're called these days, a pen signature.
here. It's just this,
Nice catch, Karen.
tell everybody, and then we'll add a comment. And it'll say, add. Electronic, say it again, Karen?
An electronic signature will be considered the equivalent of a, what do we call those? A handwritten signature? A handwritten signature. Yeah. Does that sound good to everybody? I don't know what to call a wet signature anymore, other than, you know, handwritten ink.
That's perfect. Okay, I will add that. So the motion is to include this language. Okay.
And he hasn't told us about this stuff.
Now, do we need a motion?
Yeah, we need a motion now. Sage.
I
Yes, I'm
like
picking
moving.
Sage
I like
today.
moving to do things. I move to approve this code of conduct with the edits that were just made.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Teresa. Is there any more discussion on this topic? Any public comment? Not hearing or seeing any public comment or more discussion. Roll call, Veronica?
Again, please say yes, no, or abstain when I call your name. Aaliyah Armstrong has left. Faith Dayton,
Yes.
Teresa DeSimone,
Yes.
Drew Yakamini Hare,
Yes.
Joanna Olson, I'll mark as abstain. Paul Davis,
Yes.
Noemi Guerrero,
Yes.
Karen Lovato,
Yes.
Blythe Post.
Yes.
Judy Albert had to leave. Sage Wolf,
Yes.
Dan McIntyre,
Yes.
Sandra Stolfi,
Yes.
Nicholas Canaday,
Yes.
and Denise Gorney.
Yes.
Without Judy and okay, we do still have a quorum, just barely, but motion approved. I don't know.
Thank you, Veronica. We're gonna move on to funding updates, yeah?
I was just gonna ask, Joanna has joined us. Should I go back to that vote or just leave it as a?
No, it is what it is. Funding updates, Veronica, do you want to give us an update on the COC federal funds?
Make it to my list.
Actually, you can go, yeah, we'll do one at a time.
Okay. The first update is regarding the HUD Continuum of Care or COC program. The 2023 COC NOFO was released on July 5th. We have completed our local competition documents and it is posted on our website, as it has also been distributed to the full COC mailing list. Applications are due September 28th. Any question? Do you want me to go through and then have questions or pause in between?
We'll pause in between. Is there any questions on the HUD COC? Not seeing, we'll move on to emergency shelter grant.
Okay. Emergency Solutions Grant, or ESG. The 2023 balance of state NOFA was released by the California Department of Housing and Community Development, or HCD, on August 15th, and applications are due October 16th. We have not yet had a chance to meet locally to develop our local NOFA documents, but those will be coming out shortly. I wanted to inform this group that Mendocino County's ESG CV contract, our submission for a request for proposal number 6 was selected for monitoring by HUD. And then so if it's selected by HUD, then HCD does it. And so I have provided all the requested documentation. We've met with HCD staff and they are in the process of reviewing those monitoring documents.
What are they monitoring for, Veronica?
To ensure that all documentation and everything that we're in compliance with every requirement for administration, financial management, policies and procedures, client lists, client files, the list goes on. Anything you can think of, we provide.
Karen?
It sounds like basically an audit.
It is.
Are there consequences?
We asked that. If there's a fiscal error, I guess we paid for something we're not allowed to pay for, there could potentially be some money that was owed back. That sounded unlikely, but possible, right, Veronica? It would be, I guess if we bought cigarettes, maybe I'm just pulling something out, or if one of our sub providers bought cigarettes, I guess. So, we would maybe have to work through that. We did ask if there were programmatic problems, if there were consequences, and it didn't sound like it was possible because this funding source ends. But I will say that if current ESG recipients had some significant findings, I suppose that could become a thing. So.
Now, just a question. Did we have a recapture clause or know that these would be audited? Did we have a recapture clause in our contracts with these CV providers?
I hope so. They're basic county contract language, so I'm not sure. I guess it's too soon to tell. We'll have to, maybe I'm just crossing my fingers that we won't have that kind of thing. I think we would run into trouble if a sub provider was providing rental assistance to someone who actually wasn't eligible to rapid rehousing. That's the kind of thing that would become problematic.
When we asked that question, one of the pieces that the monitors brought up is they asked, are you annual ESG recipients? And we said, no, this is
the county is not.
The county of Mendocino. This is the first and hopefully only time we'll receive ESG funds, Emergency Solutions Grant. I want to talk about before 2012, that's a whole different story. But right now, the county is not a regular recipient. And so there's no danger to the county. If we were to have some kind of finding, it might affect our ability to reapply for funding, but it most likely won't affect us because it's the first time we've ever operated a program like this. And HUD has leeway when it comes to first-time operators. The only thing that they mentioned is if there's any issues with documentations from annual ESG recipients, that may come into play with their grants, but it wouldn't affect the county. So
thank you for that.
I think we're in good shape. I mean, it wasn't, there was very little that we were like, no, we can't do this at all. There was one or two small things.
I was able to provide every piece of documentation requested. There was no, I don't have this, it doesn't exist. It was, unless it was optional items, like we didn't have any equipment to dispose of because there was nothing purchased that was a physical item for $5,000 or more. So that was an NA. So we had a few NAs, but we didn't have, they requested it and I didn't have anything to give.
Okay, thank you, Veronica. Any other questions from the board? Not here. We're going to go down to HAP.
So homeless housing assistance and prevention program, or HAP. We're doing a local competition. Request for proposals was released on July 17th and it closes on August 28th. And so that is ongoing right now. And the 7 folks that I mentioned earlier in the meeting are going to be participating in that review of the proposals.
Any questions on the HAP?
You know,
Okay.
I should give a reminder that the 2023 governor's budget includes HAP funding. They redid the 5th round. And so there's some changes to round 5 that is in legislation. And then annually thereafter, it'll be whatever the state budgets for it. So I don't know if anybody has any questions about how that redesign, but it's pretty big.
Not hearing any questions. We're going to go to Kesh.
I just wanted to remind everyone, since this is a quarterly membership meeting, that we've expended all of our California Emergency Solutions and Housing Grant Funds, or CASH, except for the funding that we have that we're utilizing for the coordinated entry lead and list manager contract with Nutmeg, which is going strong.
Any questions on the Kesh stuff? Okay, Megan, HEAP.
So HEAP is also a grant source that is fully expended at this time, but what 2 of the projects that were funded by the Homeless Emergency Aid Program, HEAP, were capital projects that became occupied within the last year. So I'm doing a brief report today on those 2 projects. As a reminder to the COC board, the COC allocated, and this funding was entirely within the COC's purview. So the COC allocated $3 million to the city of Fort Bragg to support the plateau, 20 units in the plateau, and $983,414 to RCHDC to help support a portion of Ore Creek Commons 2. 19 units were reserved for persons experiencing homelessness. That project was also folded into a No Place Like Home grant. The whole project was a bigger project in some sense. So those units were designed for people experiencing homelessness who also had a linkage to behavioral health issues. So I don't have a ton of information on these projects, but they were supposed to report back to the board. They were supposed to get all their data in, which they did after a little bit of a delay. The city of Fort Bragg's project in Plateau, the developer is Danco Properties. Those units are all occupied. They had 20 adults and 3 children were provided housing in the HEAP funded units. 2 of those households have since exited the project and their HMIS data is up to date. RCHDC opened Ore Creek Commons in July of 2022. In February, 20 adults were provided housing in the HEAP funded units, and 2 of those households have since exited the project. So that's kind of where we're going. It's doing the work that was intended by the COC. And the initial filling of the units was a little bit rocky, as we would expect, because they were filling 20 at a time from the coordinated entry list. It was kind of complicated, but hopefully we'll be getting into a easier flow, particularly with Nutmeg Consulting helping to fill vacancies efficiently from the coordinated entry list for both of those projects. That's all I have on that. Someday we should do a site visit. We said we would in the contracts. So someday I will work on scheduling a site visit, and we will invite members of the COC if they want to join as well.
public comment in any of the funding reports? I'm not hearing anything. We're going to move down to any projects. I don't see anything listed, Veronica, correct? No. Does any agency have an announcement? I'm not hearing announcements. We're going to move down. The next board meeting will be September 18th, 2023 at 1:30 on Zoom. I will not be here at this meeting, so I will let Jackie know, Drew, via email that she has to be here for the COC meeting on the 18th. So if that's it, thank you everybody for coming. We appreciate all the new members, and we will see you on the 18th.